by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Three of the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right, we're back, and Jason's back. Jason's back on the show. Wait, is this the first show it's been you and me this year? I think it is.
Yeah, it's the first show. You were either working nights, and I was just the craziest October I've ever had to deal with. Is like every weekend, every day, just something new. So now it's just Jason and the Canadian.
Yep. Yeah, Pat's in Colorado. If you didn't hear on the last show, we finally hit Twitch affiliate because we actually have been using Twitch constantly this year, but it's still not set up yet. So if you're looking and wondering, like Brett is, why you can't subscribe with Twitch Prime, it's because we still have to set up our bank account. And Pat is generally in charge of that, and he's in Colorado. So we'll hopefully get that set up coming up soon. But we have a game to talk about today, unfortunately. Ducks lost their third straight game to this time to the Dallas Stars, 2-1 final. Yeah. Not a bad game, but scoring seems to still be an issue, and an issue the Ducks are going to struggle with for most of the season.
Yeah, who would have known? Like our actual our only goal this game would come from the power play. Another thing that's struggled throughout the season too. But only one goal against Nashville when it didn't mean anything. Only one goal this game. That's not too good. We gotta find offense somewhere here.
It's not like they played bad too. I mean, me and Pat talked about this in the Nashville game as well. 6-1 was kind of a cruel final score when you look at how things went in that game, and the Predators just took advantage of the opportunities they had. This one was a little bit more tight, but we had some, I guess, positive news to start the game because Gooley was back finally, and we talked about endlessly how much the Ducks need him back on the blue line to kind of add some stability back there. Jones and Comtois, after being scratched last game, which was surprising, they both were scratched, are back in. Making way was Nick Deslauriers, which is no surprise, and there was a debate whether Devon Shore and Nick Ritchie was going to get scratched, and ended up being Devon Shore. And then Michael Del Zotto gets scratched to allow Brendan Gooley to come back in. Not surprising because Korbinian Holzer's a right-shot defenseman. And foreshadowing a bit, maybe our only right-shot defenseman for the next little bit. So he ended up playing with Jakob Larsson, and we got to see the Comtois Steele Terry line at least start the night together, which we saw at the tail end of the Calgary game. They looked really good together. Yeah. Didn't get to see them, obviously, because Comtois was scratched in the game against Nashville, but looked pretty good in this one, too.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, everything kind of looked pretty good. Was happy with the people coming in. I mean, I thought it was, time for Max Jones to just kind of have, a little sit back. Let's see what we can do better. Same with Comtois, just, hey, sit back, see it from maybe a different angle. Let's try and get different looks in there. And obviously it wasn't a fun one to have to watch Nashville just kind of trounce you. But, it wasn't going to be long that they would probably get plugged back in. But, those guys are still somewhat impact players on this team that's going to score by committee.
Max Jones still finding himself on the fourth line anytime he gets in the lineup. Nick Ritchie playing on the top line with Getzlaf and Kase. Not that I understand Nick Ritchie kind of needs that line to play well, and he hasn't played bad. He's just been taking some bad penalties. He actually didn't really take any in this game.
Yeah,
but,
today was good.
Yeah, like Max Jones is either scratched or on the fourth line, and at this point, how is it not better to put him in San Diego? Like I don't know how many minutes he played tonight. I'll have to go and check, but I'm sure it's around probably 10 or 11, maybe 12 at 5-on-5. Like, what is that? Really worth it to play him with Jones or to play him with Grant and Rowney instead of playing? I think he moved up eventually to play with Steele and Comtois, but come on, like.
I mean, I think for the Ducks at this point, they're pretty much saying like whatever's going to give us the best chance to win, and I think Max Jones is in that same area of level of Kase in that he can create his own play. And it doesn't matter if he plays on the fourth line, it doesn't matter if he plays on the first line. He's going to create his own chances. He's going to do what he does. He belongs in the NHL, in my opinion, if he can just find some way to get that puck in the net on a more consistent basis, or pretty much at all. Then you're talking about a guy who definitely deserves to be there, probably get even more ice time. He's just snake bitten, much like the rest of that Ducks team is. But I mean, sending him down and keeping whoever else in there doesn't really give us a better chance to win. I think it kind of hurts. So I think he does so many little things well that why not keep him up, because he can at least help this team. He can help San Diego if he wants to too, but I don't think he's going to learn a whole lot over there. And I think he's holding his own just fine up here. The puck's just got to go in. If it goes in, we're not even talking about it. They just haven't quite gone in yet.
Clearly, like, physically, he's ready. You saw a couple plays, and one, I think we put a gif out on Twitter of how he just, I think he outmuscled Klingberg off the puck. He literally just threw him off him, and we've seen that from Jones in the past. Like, there's no question about him physically being ready for the NHL. Maybe, getting a chance on the fourth line, he doesn't really get a chance to show his offense on a consistent basis, and hopefully, eventually, he can jump into the top 9. I still think one of him or Comtois eventually gets sent down. I don't think they're going to want to healthy scratch them for 41 games this year, and that doesn't really help his development. Not that San Diego really helps it much more, but if it's better to have him playing consistent games rather than rotating in and out with Nick Deslauriers. I don't see that happening for too long, and maybe this was the test game. They're both in there trying to see who's going to work where. I don't know if we see them go down when the homestand comes back, when they come back home, but I can't see both of them staying up for another 5-10 games.
Who would you rather see go down out of the two?
It's so tough. I mean, Maxime Comtois scoring his first goal tonight, especially on the power play. I think that helps his chances a little bit. Plus, he's been playing in the top 9. I would like to see Jones in a top 9 spot for at least a couple games before I make a hard decision on that. But if I had to take a guess, I think Max Jones is probably the guy. If one of Maxime Comtois or Jones were to go down, I think it would be him.
All right. Now, is that what you would want? Or is that just what you're assuming is most likely to happen unless something changes?
I would rather Jones stay up and take a top 9 spot, because I just want to see. We haven't really seen Maxime Comtois in the AHL. And we saw him there, I think, for 3 games on a conditioning stint with San Diego last year. He played pretty good, and then went back down to the QMJHL. I think it's good for a player's development to go down there. Plus, his buddy Antoine Morand is also down there, and you can develop some chemistry down there and get some confidence going. I think it's more suited for Comtois' development to go down and play in the AHL rather than Max Jones at this point, because Max Jones spent almost a full season down there last year and played a little bit in the season before that as well. So I would think it's probably better for Comtois to go down. And not that I want to see either of them go down. I just think with the logjam they have on left wing, the fact that you have to scratch Shore and Deslauriers at this point, and that means rotating Jones and Comtois in and out, I think Comtois is probably my pick if I had to pick somebody to go down.
I'd agree with you. Between those two, I think Comtois is better served to go down there to get more of that experience. I mean, he hasn't really played in the AHL other than just a handful of games, plus the a little bit of playoff experience where Max Jones has seen it, he's done it, he's beaten it, and he can play in the NHL. And then, more to the point with both of them is I'd like to see them both up there. If they start scoring, or like the team starts doing well, consistently putting up more than 1 or 2 goals, then I think, we don't even have to sit here and start picking apart, who's going to come in, who's going to go out. I think that they would do a lot better if the goals start coming in, we start winning by multiple goals in a game. They're not going to start touching that lineup too much. So they can help themselves out or each other out if they all start kind of contributing a little bit more on the score sheet.
We'll get into that more in the post game, because there's some injuries that happen in this game that might affect who goes up and who goes down. But let's start with the first period and really the first major play, which was the Stars' first goal of the game. You could argue that both Stars' goals were pretty identical when we get to it, but Gurianov kind of breaks in on the wing on Cam Fowler. He doesn't really make a move. He just gets a little edge on Fowler, but not enough to really get a good angle on Gibson. And he kind of just throws a backhand that beats him over the shoulder this time. I don't know if Gibson didn't expect that. We've seen this. I think it was from Gibson. Did Gibson play in the game against Columbus, or was that Miller? I'm thinking that was Miller.
Yeah, well, it depends. Miller's first game was a back-to-back, so I think it was Pittsburgh and then Columbus.
I think Miller, Gibson was in Pittsburgh, Miller was in Columbus, but it happened to Ryan Miller this season. Pierre-Luc Dubois threw a backhander on net and beat him short side. That was from a little bit of a different angle, different circumstances here, but I think Gibson here is just a bit caught off guard that Gurianov was able to get a shot off and maybe not set in position. I mean, you're the goalie expert on this podcast, so what do you think of that one?
Oh, thanks. This is one that Gibson probably wants back. The one thing I looked at when the goal went in, the backhand, the way the play looked is it looked like he could have either gone, like he might have gone around the net or might cut to the middle. It didn't quite look like he was going to shoot. And a backhand is tough to pick up exactly when they're going to release it, because they'll have their stick blade the exact same when they're going to try and hold it or when they're going to shoot it. And there's no wind up for it, like a wrist shot or a snap shot or a slap shot where there's a little back and forth. A backhand's just, it's on there and it's off, and you got to be ready for it at any time. I look at goalies, and especially if it's when it's the glove side, goalies want to have, for those of you who can't see it unfortunately, but when you're looking at the actual glove or the pocket of the glove, goalies want to have that there, so if the shots do go high, they can go and move it up, and it's not that big. Sometimes when goalies start to move or they're not quite anticipating it, their glove kind of turns in towards their body a little bit. And when that happens and it's a quick shot, they can't get their glove and they know it, so they chicken wing and they bring up their elbow and hope their elbow gets it or something like that. And that's what happened. It just went right over. Whenever that happens to me, I go like, damn it, I didn't have my glove up. And whenever goals go over like that, I'm like, damn it, I should have had my glove in the right spot. But when you start moving, you're not quite anticipating, you can't read a shot's coming, your glove's in a bad spot. And if it's quick and it's accurate and high, you just throw whatever you can in front. But when you do that, my glove was in the right spot. So you probably want that one back, but that was a great shot. That was in a good spot. It was quick. It was accurate.
Well, I guess good thing with John Gibson, you fool him once, you can't fool him again, right?
Yeah, mostly.
Maybe not.
Not in the same spot. Not in the same spot.
Okay, we'll segue into the Gurianov goal, and then we'll get back to the Manson injury. Gurianov scores again, a pretty similar play, breaks it on the exact same side. Pretty much, I think he shoots it from literally the exact same spot.
Pretty much the same one, yeah.
A little bit closer on the second goal. And this one beats Gibson short side low. So not over the shoulder this time. Maybe he thinks he's going high. Gibson was cheating a bit on this one because I think Gurianov kind of potentially had a pass option across the ice. He also had a little bit more room to maybe cut back in on the forehand. So a couple more decisions for John Gibson to make on this one. But the shot itself was not great. And I think Gibson was, cheating a little bit to pass or to Gurianov cutting back in on the forehand or making a move. And Gurianov goes with what helped him get his first goal, and he just throws a backhander on net and scores 99% similar to the first goal.
Yeah, just location is probably the only other thing. So, I mean, if he's doing that backhand, and last time you got, embarrassed, if he's able to pick up that it's the same shooter, he's probably a little bit higher this time, trying to maybe be a little bit more prepared. But he could be seeing, what are other options. The thing is, backhands, no one really fires that many backhands. So it's not something that you're expecting all the time. And once again, you could fire like that, and I could go top shelf. You can fire like that, it can never leave the ice. And it could be the same motion of the shot. Right? It's very hard to read exactly how it's coming off the stick, where it's going. Does it have spin? Does it have elevation? And at the same time, you're moving one way, and if it catches you and you're not perfectly set for it, it can find holes. I think both of these just kind of found perfect spots where Gibson just wasn't quite set on the play. So
prior to that, we skipped over it, but Josh Manson ended up getting injured right before a commercial break. He ended up needing to get helped off the ice. Looking at it from the first angle they showed, it didn't look that bad, and then they showed a wide angle where he ends up going in, I think it's on Jason Dickinson, to kind of pin him against the boards, and Dickinson makes a hard stop. And Manson just hits his knee right into the back of Dickinson's leg, and it looks really awkward. Like it bends a little bit into the side, and yeah, that angle doesn't look good. I hope he's okay. I think Eric Stevens just tweeted out right now that there's no further update from Eakins on Josh Manson or Ondrej Kase. However, Manson was on crutches outside the Ducks locker room after the game. Not a good sign. Hopefully it's just sore and he doesn't want to walk on, and they're taking precautions at this point, but crutches are never a good sign.
Yeah, I've dealt with knee injuries to ligaments, ACL, and all the like of that. So I'm somewhat familiar with it, and it can be that where you're not quite sure, or literally, until you get an MRI to see exactly what it looks like, you kind of just have to almost baby it. I've had it where same thing. I couldn't put any weight on it and move. Very next day, walking around, wouldn't know that I ever had that injury. Most of the time, that's not the case. Usually, if you can't do it, you can't put weight on it. Next day, it can stiffen right up, and it's I missed a month and a half of work once just from playing goalie, just tweaking that ligament the wrong way. So it can kind of go either way. I imagine we'll get a much better idea tomorrow because once I woke up, I was like, oh yeah. This isn't good. I need to get to the doctors. But I've had other times where it's been a little bit easier. But that didn't look good. The fact he can't even put weight on it, and the fact that he dropped immediately, hoping for the best. But I would imagine he's at least 2 weeks. Unless it's A-OK tomorrow, you're looking at weeks, not days, probably.
Yeah, this is the way Josh Manson's played. It's hard to say this is an important injury. I think the only reason you can justify it being a significant injury for the Ducks right now is because their right shot defense depth goes Josh Manson and then Korbinian Holzer, and then you go down to the AHL and you're looking at Hunter Drew or Yanni Hakanpää or Chris Weidman. Like that is their right-hand shot depth at this point. And you could roll, Michael Del Zotto and Hampus Lindholm and Gouley and Fowler and Larson and Holzer. Like, you could do that. But then you're rolling 5 lefties, and 4 of them are in your top 9, or your top 4 of them are in your top 2 pairings on defense, unless you move Holzer up, which I don't think they're going to want to do because him and Larson have played together since the beginning of the season. I don't know who gets called up because it's not like San Diego started the season well, so it's not like Yanni Hakanpää, Chris Weidman, or Hunter Drew have really impressed anybody. If this forces Murray to make a trade, maybe it's so early in the season that maybe if it was a little bit later in, I would say definitely similar to the season the Ducks had so many injuries at center that they had to go out and get and trade for Adam Henrique. Different circumstances that season, they were expected to win, and a bunch of different factors kind of went into that. But this is a similar situation in the sense that the Ducks really don't have an NHL defenseman on the right side right now. And we don't know how long Josh Manson's out. It doesn't look good. The fact he's on crutches doesn't look good. If he's out for weeks or months like that, I think that spurs Bob Murray into the market where he's got to go look.
I got an idea. I got an idea to solve this whole thing. What if we sign Sbisa? Now I know it's far fetched, and he used to play for the Ducks, and I understand going back to the Wild is a good thing. Huh?
Is he switching hands?
I don't care. He's an NHL ready defenseman. So we'll sign him. No one will waiver, pick him up on waivers because that would be ridiculous. And then we just plug him in there, fill the hole until Manson gets back. Done and done.
Yeah, but too bad the Winnipeg Jets really want him. And
they'll take anyone at this point.
I mean, it makes sense now that I look at it, but I was so sure nobody was going to claim him. But now Winnipeg's in almost a worse spot than the Ducks are on defense. The fact that Bufflin is
lost 3
just AWOL right now.
Top 3 guys. Yeah, they're top 3 defensemen: Trouba, Myers, and Bufflin. So I don't know what this says if Bufflin's not coming back or if he is, and they still need that depth.
I haven't heard anything on him. So Sbisa is their new guy. No longer a Duck. He was a Duck sort of for half a day. Not happening now. The Ducks don't really have many options. I'm sure once we get the news on Manson, I'm sure things will heat up. Some people in the chat are saying Julius Honka, who was linked to the Ducks earlier in the season, I believe he's still an RFA. I don't think he's signed. I don't think he's playing with the Stars at this point. Didn't play tonight. That one's a little bit trickier because you have to trade for him and then sign him to a contract because he's still an RFA, or Dallas has to sign him to a contract and then trade him. So that one's a bit trickier to go and get finished right now.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta wait. You can't really make decisions here while you're in a fog. So you got to kind of figure out exactly what the extent of that injury is, what that timetable is for that return. With him gone, at least Gouley is back, and so we have a little bit more depth. Del Zotto might swing into there, and you're probably just going to have to start playing left-handed defenseman in the right-handed spot. And they did that with Fowler last year, and it did just fine. Once Bob Murray took over behind the bench. So I'm not too worried about it. Right now, their biggest problem isn't defense or goaltending. Their biggest problem is scoring goals. So if they can solidify that, this team is much better and more responsible on defense from their forwards. than they were last year. So even with Manson down, I don't see it as big of a loss until another injury happens. Then we're scrapping around.
They have to call somebody up no matter what, because they're running 6 defensemen right now. I'm sure they're going to want to have a 7th on the roster just in case. It'll be interesting to see which way they go, because if they go right shot, like we already mentioned, they have some options. Jenny Hakanpää, I think, would be probably top on my list on the guy who could get called up, just because, he did have a bad preseason, but I think the potential for him to maybe look a little bit better if you throw him into some NHL action. At least, we don't exactly know what we're going to get from him yet, kind of. We've seen the small sample size. You maybe know what you're going to get from Chris Weidman. I think he'd be my second option, and then throw Hunter Drew in there as well, because I actually did like how he played in preseason and in the rookie camp. But if they're going to go left shot and just call up anybody, like Josh Mahura is still a pretty good option to call up. I think he had a great camp. I think he looked really good. I think he's getting close to being ready to play for the Ducks right now. And if you're going to call up the best option, I think Josh Mahura is probably that guy right now. But if you're going righty, then it's probably one of Hakanpää, Weidman, or Drew.
Yeah, I think they'd probably. This would be my pick. I don't subscribe as much as either you or a lot of other people would say. Oh, we need a right-handed defenseman in there. I was like, for me, defensemen now, they're so good, and you have a different ability to create offense when you're on your off wing as a defenseman. So I feel get the guy who's either A, more experienced, or B, higher skill, better in that depth chart, put the best player in there. You can make some of the other ones play off wings, and I think they'll be fine with it. I don't think it's going to be that bad. If Manson's out for 4 months, then obviously it's a much longer term thing. We got to figure out, okay, at some point we're probably going to do this. But if it's just something to fill that hole for a little while, then I think just calling up your best, most able defenseman to jump into that.
According to Shane in the chat, the most able defenseman is Randy Carlyle. He's waiting in the wings. That's where he's been. He's been training. He's been working hard. He's been waiting for this moment. I think he's a right shot defenseman. I don't care. Throw him in there.
Yeah, might as well. Worst thing that could happen is he gets injured.
He's got a Norris Trophy on his resume.
You know what? He doesn't even have to wear a helmet. Doesn't even have to wear a helmet. No, he's still grandfathered into it.
All right. Second period, Ducks get their first goal. Radulov goes off for slashing. Maxime Comtois gets his first power play goal of his career, first goal of the season. Kind of gifted to him a bit. It was a great play by Sam Steele to keep the puck in, get it to a spot where he can get a pass over to Nick Ritchie. Nick Ritchie kind of flubs on it and then just kind of throws it into the net, whiffs on it, and it lands right to Maxime Comtois, who's got an empty net to just shovel it into, takes a couple whacks at it, and it ends up finding the back of the net. Great to see him get on the board, because he's been scratched a couple games. He's getting back into the lineup after being scratched against Nashville. He got to play with Steele and Terry, which we're excited about. He gets some power play time on the second unit. And, man, he looked pretty good. I know this is, not the greatest goal, not the prettiest goal, but this is kind of the area you expect Maxime Comtois to be. He's a big kid. And on the power play, I think that area suits him well to be on that in front of the net, especially when you got 3 lefties. Like, it's an awkward power play unit to set up to begin with. I think part of that is the fact that Ondrej Kase was injured at that point and wasn't in the game. So they had Nick Ritchie, Sam Steele, and Maxime Comtois in there. So it makes it really hard to have a one-timer. And I think they wanted Sam Steele to be that kind of roaming playmaker. But great for Maxime Comtois to use his size to his advantage and get in the front of the net and put that in and get the Ducks within 1.
Yeah, you said, he's kind of gifted that. I think Dallas, a lot of things went wrong with that particular play, and a lot of things just went the right way for Comtois to be able to get that. First off, is everyone watching Steele, not taking anything away from Steele. He did a good job of keeping the puck and keeping his feet moving. He didn't really slow down or stop or anything. So it was almost like just one consecutive play where he just kind of went all the way, around or through the center of the ice, able to find Ritchie. And then this is where everything kind of goes Comtois' way. All Dallas players just look at Ritchie and they all just focus on him. Everyone kind of forgets that Comtois right there at the top of the crease, almost kind of in the backdoor area. But then Ritchie kind of throws it at the net. I think it hits the defenseman's stick. It goes right to the skate. This is where Comtois does a good thing. he kicks, he's able to get it off his skate and still be able to bat it in, push it across the line. Because I have a feeling if that goes off the skate and he doesn't get a stick on it, they start doing a review if he kicked it in, and knowing the Ducks' luck, that would get called back. So he did a good job. He was able to kick it, forward and be able to kind of hit it in. So no controversy on that one. So a lot of things went right. And I think really Steele kind of is the one who facilitated pretty much the entire play. And Richie not shooting very well.
He's still looking like the best of the young players in the Ducks this season for me. I mentioned it on the show with Pat yesterday, and he was surprised that I picked Sam Steele as the best-looking young guy, and that includes Maxime Comtois, Troy Terry, and Max Jones on the season. But I just think his poise and his ability on play, especially like that play there to wade it off, skate into the corner, spin around, and throw a pass across the ice to Nick Ritchie. I really haven't seen that from anybody else. I like the physicality from Max Jones. I like the effort that I've seen from Maxime Comtois. Troy Terry I've been a little bit disappointed in, but he's had a couple good shifts here and there in the last couple games. But Sam Steele just seems to have solid game after solid game. Doesn't always get on the score sheet. He does tonight. I think he's up to 3 points, which is, Comtois has 2, I think now. Max Jones has 1, and Troy Terry still has 1. So I still have to give the edge to Sam Steele. I've liked what I've seen from him.
I would, just based on the fact that he has had more success. I mean, a lot of his success is also due to the fact that he's got, it seems like, at least good chemistry on the power play with Getzlaf. And, he's got 2 power play points, 2 assists. Terry's been kind of a disappointment. I'm hoping it's a slow start, but, he wasn't really lighting it up last year. I mean, he had some good chances, but he seems very one-dimensional. Like, every now and again, he shows like he has it, but he just can't seem to beat anybody one-on-one. And he doesn't really have the size or tenacity, and so he's kind of in the area. He's kind of making shots, but they're kind of not going in either. Max Jones, I think, is more suited for what we need, and that's why I like him. But I would say, Sam Steele has played overall better than all the other 3. So he looks a little bit more NHL ready or seasoned. Moving forward, I think you see, him. He'll be more of a solid pick to stay in there, especially given the center depth. But I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think so. Moving on to the third, just quickly summing up the game so far. The first was pretty even. 5-on-5 was average. I think scoring chances were both 8 and 8 for both teams. Shot attempts, the Ducks actually won the shot attempt battle in the first period. They lost it in the second. The Stars had more of an advantage at 5-on-5, but the Ducks got their work done on the power play. Going into the third, it was kind of some more back and forth until obviously the end when the Ducks pulled John Gibson. But the Ducks had some good pressure to start the first. The Stars kind of took back the game, and John Gibson had to make a really good save to keep the Ducks in it. I think Radek Faksa was the guy who had the breakaway. And he didn't have a ton of space to make a move. He's not really a flashy type player anyway. So he just decides to take the shot, and it was a pretty good placement. And John Gibson, I think he either gets it with the glove or the pad. He makes that type of save where he stretches out the leg and puts the glove on top of the pad, so he can kind of cover that bottom corner of the net. But good save by John Gibson nonetheless. I think probably one of his best of the game too.
Yeah, and it's not unusual again to just see John Gibson have those types of saves that most goalies don't really have in their arsenal. A lot of other goalies will just follow this structure. And what's great about John Gibson is his instincts. Some call it athleticism, but it's just having the instinct of what save selection he's going to make in what play and how it's going to work out. And for the most part, he is so good at picking the right save attempt at the right time. I think he does it better than I would say anybody in the league. I think that's not a traditional save that you make, but it was the one that was going to work on that specific play, and he did it to a T, had everything. Sagan had a lot of chances with shots. He's just gloving them like they're nothing, and his selection or his anticipation of what save is going to work is second to none in the league, and it almost just seems normal at this point. But there's very few goalies that do what he does. And a lot of times we get a little bit like, everyone thinks he's a great goalie, but a lot of times you just you don't notice those little things that, like, wow, I don't know why he made that save or how he made the save, but he chose right and he did it right. And so that helped us out. I thought Ben Bishop had a pretty off game. He usually handles the pucks really well. He's usually, they stick to him. Yeah, usually six to them. Them and the whole team, it's quite a big turnover when you get a Perry that's only played for one team, Pavelski that's only played with one team. They're kind of veterans, a little bit older, and now you're trying to mesh with other veterans and trying to find out a new system. So you can kind of see a little bit of that, taking a while. It's probably taking a little bit longer than they thought. But it wasn't until the third period when the Ducks really poured it on, and all of a sudden, there's Ben Bishop. He's making stupid saves.
Yeah, he made
Just
a
like
couple
things
good
hitting him.
saves to end out the game, but the Ducks didn't get a ton of chances when they took John Gibson out of the net either, and they ended up wasting the final 10 seconds because Getzlaf, I think, missed a pass or deflected out of the blue line, and that ended it there. One thing I want to mention, Corey Perry didn't see much of him tonight. And people were wondering if the Ducks were going to be able to get up for a game like this with the emotions involved in playing against Corey Perry. I think it kind of was the opposite. I think Corey Perry, it's understandable. I think he struggled a bit in this game. The emotions from him are high. He's played with all of these guys pretty much last year at some point. I don't think there's really, other than Nick Delorier and a couple of the new guys, he's played with either a lot of these guys for a pretty long time or some of these guys for the last couple of years. So I think it was a game he kind of sat back and just didn't really step up in. And I know he's not the same player he used to be, but he didn't seem to be engaging too much. I think it was an awkward game for him.
Yeah, probably. But, quite honestly, he looked the same this game as he has all last season or last few seasons. Once again, like you said, just not necessarily engaged in the play. He'll be there. All of a sudden, you'll see him, or he'll be doing something, and maybe gets a chance here or there. I mean, I noticed him as much as I noticed him when he was playing on the Ducks, which is kind of why I didn't really miss him on not playing for the Ducks.
Though. He's playing with Jamie Benn and Rope Hintz. So pretty good opportunity for him to do well.
He had a good first game. He had a goal, 2 assists or something like that, 3 points or something.
Yeah, his third game he had a goal and 2 assists. I believe this is his 5th or 6th game. He still had a goal and 2 assists. I mean, I hope the guy does well. I don't know if he's if he continues to get opportunities with Bennett and Hintz. I think the points are going to come eventually. But we've seen him get chances with some great players when he was with the Ducks, and I think his best years are past him, unfortunately. But I hope he does well this year. Post-game notes, looking at what we got. We did have Sbisa. We kind of talked about that a bit. Don't know why the Ducks wouldn't claim him to begin with. I think it was San Diego depth, to say the least, and it's not like it really hurt them. I mean, they could probably use him now if Josh Manson's out for any extended period of time. Where do they go now? Let's just assume Josh Manson is out for a couple weeks. He's week to week, so 2, 3, 4 weeks into a couple months. We already kind of briefly touched on this, but do you think the Ducks stand pat? Do you think they go with what they have? Or do you think they go out and explore a trade? Because I think this is, if the injury is severe enough and the Ducks are serious about trying to make the playoffs, I think you got to go out and get somebody.
Yeah, and you know what? They've been trying. It's, you maybe want to, get on Bob Murray's case about, whatever you don't like him. The dude tried to go after Falk. That couldn't come to fruition. The dude tried to go after Shattenkirk. That couldn't happen. He's like, all right, well, I'll sign Sbisa. To sign him, and then he's gone. It's like he's tried 3 different ways to get defensemen, and he's tried for good defensemen too, and it's like at this point he was just like, anything. I'll take Sbisa. I don't care. I'll sign him. Let's take him. And then he's gone. It's like, oh my God, what does this guy have to do? Because at this point, if it's a long term, I'd say anything close to a month or longer without Manson, that's where we kind of run into problems. I think this whole time he's still trying to look for it, but once again, he's not going to do anything that's going to mortgage the farm. So at this point, everybody that he's probably really wanted to get is gone, already on another team. So it's going to be depth guys. I don't think they have a whole lot of room to try and bring in someone huge. I mean, they might go after, the Dallas dude and see if there's something there. At least Dallas isn't in our division, so maybe they're a little bit more willing to be able to make that trade. But we're going to have to give something up for that, too, because he's a young, good prospect kind of moving up. I shouldn't say prospect, but he's got a good ceiling, hopefully. If it's anything over a month, I think they're going to try and do something now if they can. And even if it's not, I still think they're trying to find more depth, especially right-handed shots. So, but the talent pool out there isn't very great for them.
I think, too, a lot of the teams that are doing bad right now aren't necessarily sellers. I think you look at the West right now, like obviously the teams that are below 500 right now, the Jets are definitely not looking to move defensemen. They just picked up Luca Sbisa off waivers to try and help their defense. The Sharks are not going to make a trade with the Ducks. Dallas, we just talked about, the only player really available from them would be Julius Honka. The Kings and Ducks aren't going to make a trade, and the Kings don't really have anybody on defense to make a trade for. Chicago, not really. I'm not going after Brent Seabrook, and I don't think they're willing to move any of their young guys.
You know what? I think that's something Bob Murray might do.
I think, if I can't remember correctly, but I believe...
I gotta know how much. Does he have a no trade?
I think he still has... Yeah,
modified?
I think he has a no trade. I still think he has like 4 or 5 years on like a $6 million deal. I don't think that happens. Minnesota, they just signed Jared Spurgeon to a long-term contract, and Matt Dumba's not going anywhere, so I don't think that's happening. You can go east and you look at Detroit. They don't really have many options. Ottawa doesn't really have any... Yeah, but I think Bob Murray's explored and kind of passed that a bit. New Jersey and New York aren't going to move anybody right now. And the only team I look at still is, because there's been rumors that Bob Murray's been looking at him before, but the price was too high, and that's Rasmus Ristolainen with the Buffalo Sabres. I think whenever Brandon Montour gets back for them, that becomes a realistic possibility for any team to go after Rasmus Ristolainen. But the Sabres are 8-2-1 right now. I don't think you want to mess with that the way things are going. And it's not like Rasmus Ristolainen has been great for them. I think right now he has 5 points in 10 games, 5 assists, no goals. And that's kind of a bit down from him when you consider Rasmus Dahlin has taken over this team on the blue line. And he has 10 points in 10 games. So they don't really need him. And I think when Brandon Montour comes back, that's when they're going to start exploring trade opportunities. But I think, with the Sabres not in a panic to move him because they're 8-2-1, and with the Ducks dealing with injuries, and I think the price would even go up from what Bob Murray was asking for in the summer.
Now, that 8-2-1 record, does that count them being shelled tonight 6-2 to the Rangers?
I believe so, yes.
So their only losses have been blowouts to the Ducks and the Rangers. Because Buffalo started out hot. But they started out hot last year too, and then everything went downhill. So I'm not convinced that Buffalo is not still maybe skeptical of how their start is. So they might be a good trade option for sure, for all the reasons you said too. So Dahlin's their cornerstone on defense. I think Montour, they'd much rather have him as another young defenseman, kind of cornerstone to try and build something around defensive core. So I wouldn't mind Ristolainen. Like I said, I think it's more in the Bob Murray wheelhouse to do a quick fix on a guy who used to be good offensively, and I think Mike Crane's probably it would be just such a Bob Murray thing to do. So
Daniel in our chat said Buffalo's apparently now looking to trade Marco Scandella. Scandella's a left shot defenseman, primarily played for Minnesota in the beginning of his career. Has played for Buffalo for the last 3 seasons. Not a bad option if you get him cheap. He's an NHL defenseman, that's for sure. He's a bottom pairing guy. I think he's better than Del Zotto and Holzer that you have right now. Probably a little bit better than Jakob Larsson as well. But it all depends on what you're going to have to give up for him. 3 points in 10 games so far, +7, 12 shots on net. He's more of a stay-at-home two-way guy. He can contribute to the offense. His best season, he had 23 points in 64 games back in 2014-15. Maybe. Out of desperation, maybe that's something they do. But the problem, and I don't even say the problem becomes when Josh Manson comes back, what do you do? Because I think you just play Marco Scandella with Jakob Larsson, or you play Marco Scandella instead of Jakob Larsson. That's not really an issue. I think he still fits in the lineup no matter what. It all depends if they can get a trade done. And it's relatively cheap, because I don't think Bob Murray's really in a panic to go out and spend a ton on a guy like Marco Scandella at this point.
Yeah, and this might not be a popular opinion, but quite honestly, Josh Manson has struggled throughout most of this season. Whatever was working in seasons past with Lindholm, I've just seen a lot of errors. I'm always kind of hoping that things just all of a sudden start clicking, but he seems a little bit off too, and I don't necessarily see it as a huge loss for the Ducks, as long as you got at least somebody who's NHL ready to kind of move in and they can move those pieces around. Because the only thing that they really kind of lose in that is the tenacity and the in-your-face style and being able to clear the front of the net. You get that a little bit with Holzer, but Holzer will make more mistakes than Josh Manson will, and not necessarily a much better option there. So I'm kind of torn between the two. It's like, I'd much rather have Josh Manson of old in there, but if I had to choose between anything, I'd rather have Josh Manson now. But I just don't feel like it's as big of a loss, other than the fact that we now have almost no right-handed shot defenseman. That's kind of the biggest loss, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be tough no matter what they do, and hopefully we hear an update on Josh Manson tomorrow. Next guy we got to talk about is Ondrej Kase, because we've kind of swept him under the rug a bit because of how significant positionally Josh Manson's injury is. But Ondrej Kase also got injured tonight, and there's less information, I guess. Not like there's a lot of information out about Josh Manson right now, but there's even less out about Ondrej Kase. His is being termed an upper body injury, which
concussion.
Which is not a good sign. I didn't see the play, but apparently he got in a collision with Rupe Hintz at center ice, and they were both down on the ice, and that's all I really saw. And that's never a good sign, especially, like you said, with Ondrej Kase's concussion history. I don't want to go out and say it is right now because we don't know, but
I will.
It's worrying, right? It's worrying because he has that history with concussions, and the guy just can't stay on the ice right now. And maybe he comes back in this game and plays, and maybe he's fine. But the fact that he had to leave the game as being deemed an upper body injury, we've seen the story, a couple times before already, and then he ends up missing, 30, 40 games and doesn't play into the end of the year. I don't know if, I hope not. I really hope not, but it seems like deja vu.
Yeah. And the only part that you could see, because I never really reviewed it in the telecast, was just what you saw live, and that was literally like all of a sudden, like the camera's like watching something over here, and then as the puck kind of moves across, then all of a sudden, like you see two players kind of sprawled around, and one of them's Kase, and then he didn't really play after that. So my thought is that these two guys came together, hit, and especially if you're prone to concussions, and just from what I've seen over the years, if you unexpectedly get hit and that jolts your body, that's where concussions tend to happen more often. 100% speculation on this side here, but the fact that seems to be his major injury every year, he doesn't seem to go without a concussion for the most part. To be all of a sudden unexpectedly, like you're watching the play and you get jolted and your brain smacks around, you're far more susceptible to concussions after you've had one. And if you've had multiple, it just gets amplified. The fact they call it upper body injury, and it didn't really look, because he was on his knees when he was kind of skating, so it didn't seem like all of a sudden like his arm was, his shoulder was dislocated or whatever another upper body injury would be. If it's an upper body and he didn't get smashed in the boards where his shoulder or arm looked like he got hurt or he got slashed, other than that, you got to think it's concussion related. Now, it might just be precaution, and it's just like, hey, let's really kick it back. Hey, this game's not that important right now. Let's just see how the game goes, and we'll reevaluate you later. But the fact they kind of kept him out for that long, it's one way or the other. They're either being very cautious about it, or we got another concussion with him.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I think we did see with Kase out of the lineup, we saw, I believe, Steele Jones and Comtois together. That means one of them was on the right wing. I'm not sure who it was. I would assume it was probably Maxime Comtois, because he's done that in junior before. That might be what we end up seeing, is one of those guys shifted to the right wing, or you end up going down and bringing up a guy like Daniel Sprong, who would, I don't know at this point if he would have to clear waivers again. I don't think so. But you could call up a guy like Daniel Sprong. You could call up Kiefer Sherwood, who's also still down there. Those are options if the Ducks want to explore it. But right now, you got a guy like Devon Shore, who you could also plug on the right side if you wanted to. You do have, again, like we said, Maxime Comtois and to Max Jones, who played tonight. So it might be an easy slot in to just plug in Devon Shore into the lineup and then go from there and just run Nick Deslauriers as your 13th forward and just run with 13 forwards and 7 defensemen when the Ducks bring up a defenseman. That's a possibility to do what they want there. I don't think they're gonna head down to San Diego just yet, but we talk about Josh Manson struggling this year. Ondrej Kase has been the complete opposite. He's been one of the Ducks' best forwards, maybe behind just Raquel and Silfverberg this year, and what he's been able to do in creating plays and just being that persistent threat on the ice. He's a tough guy to lose. We say this every time we get injured. He's a tough guy to lose because he's always playing well. And it would be just so disappointing for the player himself to have to be out for another extended period of time, especially when he's playing so well.
Yeah, and if it's concussion related and you're talking about having 3 or 4 concussions this early in your career, you almost have to start, I mean, this is obviously going extreme and taking a lot of assumptions in here, but, at that point, it's kind of like, well, damn, if I hadn't got those concussions, where could my NHL career have gone? But at the same time, do you keep trying to take those concussions and you start taking the Paul Kariya route where it's like every single year there's some sort of head hit or some sort of concussion? And the way he plays, he is going to be susceptible to those weird hits that happen so often. And, at some point it almost becomes just, taking a slap shot, you whip your head a little too hard, and then all of a sudden that becomes, an issue for you. And then, concussions are crazy where, it could be almost nothing, and then it lasts for a year, 2 years on concussion. So there's something you always got to kind of take into account, hopefully not, because he is such a skilled and dynamic player, and one that doesn't come around too often. And you try and hold on to him if you can, but at some point, it's, if you're just going to keep having concussions, then it's not worth it. So hopefully it doesn't get to that. But
yeah, this is hindsight and maybe a bit cruel at this moment in time. But do you regret not trading Ondrej Kase for Justin Falk at this point now? Now, I mean, this is circumstance right now, and it's pretty easy to make my case with the fact the Ducks losing a right-handed defenseman and Ondrej Kase getting injured again. Nobody would have predicted this at the beginning of the year, and I think 90% of us would rather have Ondrej Kase over Justin Falk. But do you regret it? Like, you look at if they had him if they had Justin Falk, they would be fine.
You use the word regret like, oh, we really wanted to pull the trigger and we just didn't do it. I think that trigger was pulled and they wanted to make that happen. And then just because of how Carolina's ownership, I guess, really kind of handled it, that, that never came to fruition.
Apparently
Justin Falk just didn't want to come over here.
An extension, yeah.
Yeah, no, this was the biggest thing. Everyone's like, oh, no, they better not get rid of Kase. Kase is just the greatest. And I love him to death, and I love the player he is. This was my biggest concern, and that's why I was like, if you can trade him and get some value out of it, I was much happier with doing that, trading him, because in my opinion, once you start getting 2 or 3 concussions that early on in your career, it's probably going to be a thing that you have to deal with all the time. So I felt it was going to be a much better thing to hopefully get Justin Falk or anybody else, because I just felt at some point Kase was going to have to deal with this again. And like I said, just the style of play is just one that kind of leaves him open for this thing to kind of continue. So, I wish it had kind of worked out. Falk didn't want it that way. If we could have found somewhere else to kind of put it, but now if it's another concussion, I think teams are going to steer clear. And this is kind of like we're stuck with, Dupre, where we got him and, concussion. And after that, it was just never the same. Another quick concussion after that, and it was just done. So, I mean, it can happen that quickly, and there's just not a lot you can do at this point. So,
okay, let's get into questions.
Sure.
We're still, only 11 games into the season, but Daniel asked, do you think long term it would have been better for the Ducks to have another lottery pick, preferably another top 10 pick? I think he means this year. Do you think long term at the end of the year, is it better for the Ducks to just get another lottery top 10 pick than try and scrape into the playoffs and see how things go from there?
There's a yes and no to that. Sure, would you love another top 10 pick? Absolutely. Who wouldn't? But, almost at what cost? And, I think we've talked about it before. The Ducks aren't in a market where you can continually be bad, even if it's for a couple of seasons. You start losing fans that way. It starts becoming harder for people, players to want to come over and play in. And I mean, we have great weather. If the team doesn't look like they're trying and they're not moving pieces forward, then it's harder and becomes maybe a little bit long of a rebuild. At the same time, I don't think the Ducks were bad at all. They were just poorly coached last year. The style did not fit what the NHL is. It died the season before, and they just kind of kept limping along all of last season. The Ducks made a youth movement, which is great. And what's good about doing that is that if you have the talent and the young players to do it, you can transition from missing a season to competing for the playoffs to eventually doing, hey, we're a competitor and now we got aspirations again to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Were they going to, go to the Stanley Cup Finals? Are they Stanley Cup Final contender this year? Absolutely not. Could they compete for a playoff spot? Why wouldn't you want to do that? Especially with the young talent we have, get them the more experience in the playoffs if you can. Give them that chance. So tank in a season, I hate doing that. It might have worked back in the day where, hey, we're really bad and it's going to take 5 or 6 years to really get back in, and we'll need many first top 10 picks. But I don't think the Ducks have to do it that way. I think they can rebuild on the fly because I think they have a good transition of players. When you talk about Silverberg, a young defensive core with Lindholm and Fowler, John Gibson, you're going to waste his good years on trying to tank, and how great is that going to be? So no, I don't think it is really good. I think compete as well as you can. I think they have an opportunity to still make the playoff in a division spot. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. But if you can get into the playoffs and you've got momentum, look at what St. Louis did. They were last in December in the entire NHL, and they won the Stanley Cup. Get in. Just get into the playoffs and see where you can go from there.
I think St. Louis is a bit different because I think they were a team that was predicted to go far, and they just struggled for the first half of the season. I agree with you. I don't think the Ducks should tank to get a pick, but I don't think they should go out and sell assets and try and add players, especially due to injuries right now, to try and make the playoffs. I think you just run with what you've got and see how it goes. If they make the playoffs, they make the playoffs. If they don't, they don't. Preferably, I would like another top 10 pick. Not to say I don't want them to make the playoffs, but I really like how this draft is shaping up and how deep it is, especially in the top 10. And I think the Ducks could get a really good player to counter with to complement with what they got in Trevor Zegras in last year's draft. I think they could go out and there's a lot of good wingers around, 5 to 10 in this year's draft coming up that the Ducks could go out and get a pretty good player. I'll be happy with either. The only thing I wouldn't be happy with is obviously them just barely missing out on the playoffs and finishing with that 9th or 10th spot in the conference, getting a 12, 13, or 14 pick, and then also not making the playoffs. I think that's the worst case scenario for the Ducks at this point. If they don't make the playoffs, then obviously it's best to finish as low as you can and try and get a better chance of getting a higher pick, because they're at that interesting point where they've got some good young players coming up. They've just got to wait for them to develop, and we have 4 of them in the lineup right now. I guess 5 if you include Brendan Gooley as well. Trevor Zegras is on the way. Braden Tracy's on the way. Benoit Olivier Gru's on the way. But you've got guys like Hampus Lindholm and Cam Fowler and John Gibson, who aren't old, but they're in their mid to late 20s. They're starting to get there, and you can't wait forever. You can't wait forever for these guys to develop before you waste the years, especially of Hampus Lindholm and John Gibson, who John Gibson is arguably the best goaltender in this league, and Hampus Lindholm, I think in some circles is a top 10 defenseman in this league when you look at just his ability. Maybe not, offense, but I think just his ability on the puck.
I'd say maybe not over the last this year or last year, but I'd say years past.
Yeah, so he's still very good. You don't want to waste the years of those guys, and they have many years left, but it's a tough situation to be in for the Ducks. Next question we had was from Josip on Instagram. He said, if you guys could have waited to buy Corey Perry, would you have given him one more year to see how he'd work under Dallas Eakins, or do you think no matter what, he was a lost cause?
I think he would have just stifled what we have. You could probably I would have maybe banked on the fact that Kase was going to be injured. But at the same time, I could have banked on the fact that at some point Corey Perry was going to be injured. He was injured the first part of the whole season. So it's like you've got a much older Corey Perry, although motivated by being bought out and, a prove-me-year contract, see if he can kind of keep up with the new NHL. No, I wouldn't have thought to not buy him out and give him that one more year. I'd give everybody else a year, but Corey Perry has been on the decline for years. Same thing with Cogliano. I didn't necessarily mind the trade just because his speed is fine. It's great. It's whatever. But at some point, you're going to need offense, and neither one of those guys is really producing the offense that we needed, and definitely not at the cost that Corey Perry was going to cost us to keep him on there to block younger players from getting a chance in there. So everything that happened is kind of, I don't mind. I think that's kind of the way it just had to be, although painful and maybe hurts a little bit on the heart. He was just going to take up spots and cost too much money to do it.
Yeah, it was the right hockey move, and next year that might get a little bit more difficult to defend with the fact that the cap hit's going to go up,
Still gonna
that
cost,
the Ducks
yeah.
have to cover for next year. Then obviously after that, he goes back down for the final 2 years. But I still think it was the right move for the Ducks at this point. It's not like Corey Perry's gone to Dallas and lit it up and shown the Ducks what they're missing. And maybe he does that. You know, he's only played, I think, 5 or 6 games so far this year, so maybe he turns it around. But even if he does, the Ducks needed to make room for these young players to get experience now. Like we said, they don't have an infinite amount of time like some of the younger teams out there to let these guys develop as a group. They've got some older core players in there that are about to approach or are approaching or are in their prime at this point. So I think it's a little bit more testy for the Ducks to try and keep a guy like Corey Perry around. I don't think Dallas Eakins would have brought much more out of him, maybe a little bit more. Maybe he gets more opportunities with a coach like Dallas Eakins, but
I wouldn't even say that. Yeah, I wouldn't even say that because I would feel like the roll 4 lines now where Corey Perry got to play a lot more minutes, in past seasons. Now he'd have less time. It's a faster game. Maybe he can still make a pest of himself, but other than that, the way the Ducks play now, Corey Perry really doesn't fit into that style that Eakins does. So, Eakins.
Next question we have is from NZ Sniper 94 on Instagram. He said, "Are we slowing down?" Could take that two ways. I'm gonna take it in general sense of the Ducks' hot start, not their actual pace of play. Started the season it was 6-2-0, and then now lost 3 straight, so they're 6-5-0. Do you think they're slowing down and maybe regressing to what their potential is for this season instead of overexceeding?
They're getting chances, and that's all I really care about. There's going to be learning curve along the way, so there's still going to be those games where you make a bad play, you make a bad decision, you're learning a new style with a new coach for the most part, so you're going to have those bumps in the road because they don't have a ton of NHL experience, a lot of the guys, the younger ones that they're counting on to try and get a little bit more offense. Right now our offense is struggling. I think our power play is really struggling, even though we scored like 1 second left on that power play, and it was kind of a broken play. So the special teams has to get a lot better. Our goaltending is gonna stay solid, I think, this year, because we're not giving up the horrific chances of last year. So I think this year we're gonna get the chances. We just have to convert a little bit more. Execution's a little bit off. It is early in the season. It is a new style, and there are new faces in there. It'll all start meshing a little bit better, I think, as the season moves forward. So as long as we can stay healthy and we're staying on the path, as long as we're getting chances to score, eventually they should. Probability says we should start scoring more goals. Last 2 games sucked because Cam Talbot just pulled saves out of his butt, and then this one, it was just like we couldn't buy one against Bishop. So it's just he turned it on when we were the most dominant. That's when all of a sudden he became Ben Bishop again. Yeah. We just could not find ways to get through, and that'll happen throughout a season.
On the topic of scoring more goals, this is a question that me and Pat covered, I believe, either on the last show or the show before that. I think it was last show. Hunt J. Justin says, "Do you think we might get Taylor Hall?" Now, I'm gonna kind of loop you into what me and Pat were discussing about. Taylor Hall has got 1 year left on the $6 million contract, and I believe the article we'd referenced from Sportsnet was talking about how the Ducks could bring him in as a rental for this year. We said pretty much that, and I think you would agree that that's not a Bob Murray move to bring a guy like that on the rental. So scratch the rental because we don't think that would happen. But would you trade for Taylor Hall and sign him to an extension? Now, you would think he would probably get a 7-year extension past that, and he is 27 right now, turning 28, so that would bring him to 35 when his contract's done. Would you trade for Taylor Hall on a sign-and-trade, knowing that would increase the cost of the player in a trade as well?
No, probably not. From an organizational standpoint and the way the NHL is, not last year, the year before, he had the amazing season, but that was it. That was his amazing season, and he's been all right. He hasn't been bad, since then. It was a nice change of scenery, getting out of Edmonton and being in New Jersey. but you're going to mortgage the farm. I mean, you're going to have to give up quite a bit for New Jersey to let him go, and then you're going to have to sign him for 6 or 7 years at, 7-8 million a year, something like that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the Ducks side of things. The rental doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the Ducks side of things. They figure something else out. I think they could probably find a better deal somewhere else. And when you have a big name like that, you tend to overpay, and Bob Murray does not like to overpay. And especially on a guy who's 27 and you want to carry him, hopefully he comes back and does what he did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Probably not going to happen. And I mean, it's hopeful, be as optimistic as you want, but that's a whole lot of optimism to get behind for 7 years. So I would decline that.
Yeah, the chat seems to agree. Daniel says no. Coach Blood says no in a more in a way that I'm not going to mention on the show.
Can't do it.
Yeah. Brett said if we're playoff bound, but no, he's been injury prone. Joshua, I think, sums it up perfectly. He said, would he be welcome? Yes. Should we get him? No. I think that sums it up perfectly. Yeah, he would be a great addition to this team, but at a 7-year deal, probably north of $8 million.
He'd have to be it'd have to be a rental, and it'd have to be towards the end of the season where the salary cap hit isn't as much. But once again, we'd have to have serious signs for Bob Murray to want to do that, because he didn't do it last year, the year before that. He doesn't make deadline deals. He doesn't, he's either happy with the team he's got or he's not. But he's not going to do a trade deadline thing. So it's a nice thought, but it's a pipe dream. It just it's not really gonna happen. It just doesn't make sense on any sort of front for the organization.
All right. Last question we have is from Jacob on Twitter. We did have a question from Jason about what would the team impact be long-term if Manson was down, but we covered that in a few other questions today, but I just wanted to shout out Jason for the question. Jacob said, at which point in the season do the floodgates open and the posts expand ever so slightly? How long can a team be so close so often and still not score? When do the floodgates open for the Ducks offense?
Tomorrow. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine out there. We've seen games where we put in enough goals to get free chicken from Chick-fil-A, but then there's a lot of these ones. It's 6-1. It's 2-1. It's the magic number for the Ducks is score 3 goals, because the Ducks goalies do not give up more than 2 goals. Gibson's only done it twice this season, against Boston and Nashville. So in those instances, if the Ducks can just muster up 3 goals. But yeah, it just seems like right now everything just seems to be against them getting those goals. So just a little bit here and there. The fact they're getting chances, and this is better than last year where they would only score 1 goal or 2 goals. It was like, all right, well, we get 5 chances a game and we got 1 or 2 in. That's not too bad. Now it's like, hey, we're getting as many scoring chances as the other team, and something's kind of in the way. So law of probability, eventually everything will catch back up at some point or over the course of a season, unless it's one of those seasons where it just, like, you always have a team that just unexpectedly just shoots 14% across the board and everyone's scoring goals, and it doesn't make sense, but it's not sustainable. But it might be for a season. So hopefully for the Ducks, everything kind of starts evening out. But if it doesn't, it could just be one of those seasons where things just do not go your way for puck luck. But it's fun, exciting to watch because they are getting those chances.
I honestly think the floodgates aren't going to open consistently. I think we're going to get a similar trend to what we've already seen this season, where you're going to get a few games here and there where the Ducks look like they're going to start scoring consistently, and they're going to score 4 and then 5 one game, 6 another game. And then we're going to get right back into, a few games in a row where they score 1 or 2 and they don't generate a lot of scoring chances. And I think that comes from the fact that you got 4 forwards in there who are still kind of learning their way in the game and aren't consistent scorers in the league yet. Your hottest forward, Adam Henrique, is not going to consistently score 5 goals across 10 games for the rest of the year. That's not going to happen. Ricard Verkaal and Jakob Silfverberg, I think they have the potential to keep doing well. Ryan Getzlaf with less minutes, he's been getting less minutes than he did last year. That's going to make an impact on his production as well. So you're going to see, the talent is there for them to break out every now and then, or to have a stretch where they do really well. But there's not going to be this moment in the season, that game 21 where the Ducks just start scoring goals and that continues for the rest of the year. That happens with teams who are top 10 offenses in the league where they can consistently score like that. The Ducks, if everything goes right, are maybe a top 20, between top 15 and 20 offense if everything goes right. And I think realistically they probably finish around 20, 21, 22 in goals for per game when they get to the end of the year. And honestly, that's an improvement. They were dead last
Hell of an
year.
improvement from last year.
If you jump up 8 spots from last year, obviously 21st, 22nd, 23rd in the league isn't great in offense, but it's an improvement. And it means that guys who had off years the year before got better. It means the young guys have come in and at least made somewhat of a difference. And if the Ducks goaltending and defense stays the same, which it looks like it likely is going to, that means more standing points because you've got some more wins as well. So I don't think it's going to be an epiphany in the Ducks offense is going to be a top 5 offense in the league at some point this year. But there's going to be games where they figure it out. We've already kind of seen that already.
I think of the power play clicks too. That's a huge one. Right now, that's losing us games. We're getting chances, and it's not clicking. But once again, it's like signs of brilliance, and plays that look like they're going to start working out for us. I think the pucks start going in on the power play, then you start looking at maybe a significant jump in that offense. Because right now, if we're losing games 2-1 or 1-0 or 3-2 or something like that, the power play will make all the difference in the world. In fact, we only have 2 this far in there. I mean, just add a couple more here or there, and what games are we back in all of a sudden? And now our record looks completely different. So power play struggled out of the gate. Hopefully that improves. I think our record improves greatly as that improves, which is not earth-shattering news, but if the Ducks can get that solidified, I think that makes a lot of these games a whole lot easier to win.
Yeah, if anything right now is performing, is unlucky for the Ducks, I think it's the power play, because I think they do have 2 solid units they can put out there. And I think it definitely isn't the worst power play in the league, and I don't think it will finish that way. I think it will be somewhat around what they have with the regular offense at the end of the year. So if if they're going to finish somewhere between 15 and 25 and goals per game, the power play you would hope would finish somewhere in between there too. I don't think it's going to be a top half of the league power play, because I just don't think they have the consistent scores to do that. They've got a lot of great passers out there with Raquel and Getzlaf and Steele, but they don't have a shooter, and they really haven't earmarked a guy to shoot on the power play yet. They just kind of throw it around, and whoever gets it gets it. We saw it on the goal tonight with Maxime Comtois in front of the net. There's no setup guy. I always bring this back, but I really like how Buffalo sets up on their power play this year when we talk about power plays. And they have their shooter. And on their top unit, it's Victor Olofsson. They have their setup guy who also can shoot the puck in Jack Eichel. And I think that's really important to have a guy who is such a threat to shoot and can score goals for fun and also make the pass. And that throws goalies off, it throws defense off. And I think that really works for what the Sabres do. And then they got a guy like Rasmus Dahlin manning the point single-handedly. He's got free roam to do whatever he wants. The Ducks could make that work. And I've already mentioned this before. You throw a Cam Farrell or Hampus Lindholm up there. You throw a Getzlaf in where Eichel is. And, his threat to shoot, I think, is just as good if he actually shot the puck a bit more. And obviously his passing ability is one of the best in the league. And then you throw, one of your lefties over on that side where Olofsson is, whether it's Maxime Comtois, which I think would be a great option over there, or if you want to throw Sam Steele over there for another pass option. And then you throw whoever you want down the middle, whether it's Rickard Rakell or Jakob Silfverberg or Nick Ritchie or Maxime Comtois, like I already mentioned. I think they have the opportunity to make that work, but they seem pretty set in stone in running the typical, 2-2-1 type power play or the 2-1-2 type power play. And, to be fair, not many teams run a 1-3-1 because it doesn't work for everybody. But I think for the Ducks, I think they have the talent in there to make something like that work.
Yeah, just got to get more of those shots through to the goalie and then be a little bit more tenacious and trying to get to those rebounds. I think Nick Ritchie kind of fits in a good spot, taking the Corey Perry angle or your Ryan Kessler. I think he's got the chance to do pretty well in there. But yeah, like you said, it's shown moments where everything's clicking. Those passes are going around, and the occasional shot happens. That sort of deal. I'd like to see a little bit more. But anytime you can take it, especially from up high and shoot, you make everybody who's killing the penalty have to turn back around, look at where the puck went, where that rebound is, where their guys are, and you start getting them to kind of look back and forth a whole bunch of times. That's where things start opening up, and hopefully get a little bit more of those scoring chances. So room for improvement, but they're light years ahead of where they were last year. Couldn't enter the zone last year. So
tough test coming up this weekend. It is Colorado on Saturday, and then who do we have on
Vegas
Sunday?
after that.
Vegas on Sunday. So
Yeah.
two probably the toughest
Road
back-to-backs.
back-to-backs, yeah.
Probably two of the toughest teams they've played all year, and how good
Yeah.
Vegas is and how well Colorado's playing this year. So that'll be interesting to see how it goes. Update Saturday show, it will be me and you, I believe, on Saturday.
Yes, on Saturday,
And then Sunday, it's me, and I've got my buddy from the Hockey Writers, Anthony Cherdelli, who's going to be joining the show and co-hosting that show because Jason and Pat are unavailable. So we will be having back-to-back
I'll be in a
shows.
hockey tournament for charity, so
Yeah,
there's a
Saturday.
reason I'm giving
Saturday
back.
is 50-50 right now because I should be available Saturday, but we're going to see how things go. So if for some reason we end up not having a show Saturday, both games will be covered on Sunday, but we'll update you guys with that on social media as that kind of develops. I got to give a shout out to Cool Hockey again. They just today got the Ducks third jersey, so if you're looking to go out and buy one, make sure you go to coolhockey.com. Try our code FM20. I believe Ricky or somebody in the chat 2 shows ago said it didn't work in the summer when they tried it. I went in there and I tried to update it and see. You can check if it works now. If it doesn't, then just send us a message and we'll go in there and try and fix it. But make sure you go to Cool Hockey and check it out because they're gracious enough to sponsor our Forever Mighty 3 Stars leaderboard, which 45 minutes before puck drop, you can enter in 3 predictions for that night's Ducks game. You get points on our leaderboard, and whoever has the most points at the end of the month wins a free customized jersey from Cool Hockey. It's like a $250, $300 value, and all you have to do is answer 3 questions on Twitter before the Ducks game. And I know most of you, if you're in here, you're probably on Twitter. You probably follow us on Twitter. So if you're not participating in that contest, you're missing out on a pretty good free chance at winning a jersey. Patreon, we just released our rant show. We have a Pucks and Brews show coming up, and we have a game show that is going to be sometime before the end of the season. It's called the Bobby's Bargain Bin Game
Not
Show.
end of the season, end of the month.
I was looking forward to Luca Sbisa coming back because that would have been perfect for the Bobby's Bargain Bin Game Show, but of course, now he's in Winnipeg. Well, we can still do it because he was a
Sure,
bargain bin at some point. But
It was an attempted bargain bob thing.
But yeah, that will be coming out. So if you like our show, if you like this show, and you want to get some more content, and you want to support this show as well, you can head over to patreon.com/PuckGuysForeverMighty and check out all the bonus content over there. If you want a hat like the one Jason's wearing as well, if you subscribe to the $10 tier, you get a hat just sent out to you. We also have koozies and lanyards that are part of the rewards right now that we're in the midst of ordering. Those will be sent out to current Patreon members and obviously anybody new who signs up as well. So a lot of great stuff if you guys want to support the show and get some extra content. But,
especially if you're a lanyard enthusiast.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you want a hat, because right now, actually, I think we still have one hat available on the website.
Yeah, if you have a medium-sized head, and
you want to snap back. If you have a medium-sized head and you want to snap back, go to forevermighty.com, go to the shop, and you can get the last hat that we have available until we order new hats, because apparently everybody wants fitted hats. So they sold out pretty quickly. I think they sold out. We had about 8 of them, and they sold out in the first night and a half. And then the snapbacks have just been kind of slowly going here and there. Somebody asked the other day, hoodies and T-shirts, we're working on them. I don't know how close they are to coming out. It really all comes down to inventory and money for us and being able to purchase that inventory and get that out to you guys. But it's definitely something we're aware of, and we know the demand's there. We're just working on it. So make sure you check out
I want a shirt too. So
yeah, so do I. Make sure you check out the website, forevermighty.com, for everything for the podcast, all the ways to listen, and follow us on Twitter for any updates. And we'll be back on hopefully Saturday, if not Sunday.
All right.